Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We're up for this webinar at Sotheby's Institute of Art, London, and I'm the program director, David Bellingham, of the MA in Art Business, and I believe that you're all here. You've all expressed interest in hearing more about this program. So the way I'm going to structure this is I'm going to do an introductory talk with some slides about the program. And then I'm going to introduce the Deputy Programme Director, Melanie Pasha, my colleague who's in the room as well. We also have other colleagues in the room, and she will say a little bit about her own interests and then hand over to colleagues who will talk about a little bit about themselves and their own expertises and interests. And then we'll open it up to questions from you. So without more ado, the program was founded in 1998, and it might interest you to know the reason it was begun. It's because Sotheby's Auction House contacted the Educational Institute, which had already been around since the 1960s, and said, we get all these very, very brilliant art historians working in our specialist departments at the auction house. And very few of them know anything about business and finance and management and teamwork, etc. Could you produce a master's degree for art historian undergraduates which bridges that gap? And so that's how the program was born more than 25 years ago. And I took over as program director early in the new millennium. And I inherited a program which was already really exciting, and we grew the program very much. And over the years, obviously, we've adapted it. I think myself and my colleagues will agree with me. We really like to keep ahead of the game. So at the moment, obviously, we're working a lot on how we might teach our students to use AI in a way that employers of our students would want them to know about how to use AI in art business. And obviously, as an academic program, we have the usual issues about the way our students use AI in their own work. But we're beginning to adopt a more positive attitude, as I think most courses that are vocational, as ours is, would want to do. The photograph that you're looking at, by the way, I took this a few years ago, about 10 years ago, actually. This marble statue is actually an ancient Greco-Roman statue, and it was used to stand in a English country house with its collections of antique sculptures and paintings purchased on the Grand Tour in the 18th century in West London, Sion House. And they had some financial liquid cash issues. They decided to get Sotheby's experts in and select a few works which could go on sale to make up their financial shortfall. So this was my visit to the preview. And what is very, very interesting in the photograph is that you'll see that this antiquity is not standing surrounded by other antiquities. In the background is an Andy Warhol dollar sign painting. And this was the beginnings, well, not quite the beginnings, but this is something we teach our students about what's happening in the art world and collecting at the moment. We have this phenomenon of cross collecting and cross display. So people like to mix antiquities with contemporary and other art market sectors these days. You can see standing in the middle are a couple of guys. I think they're looking at their smartphone. They're the new generation of art collectors, you know, Gen Zs, who we know from generational wealth is being passed on to them. And our students become very, very aware of that as well. And they're part of that generation, of course. So these people become the new art collectors. So this it's a bit of a messy slide. I apologize for it. I've screenshot photographs of my colleagues with their names. So just you'll meet most of these colleagues later on. So up here is my colleague Melanie Pasha, the Deputy Programme Director and Senior Lecturer. Here is Oliver Pedersen Gilbert, who I know is in the room as well, and he will talk more about his interests. We have amongst full-time staff, that's Melanie, Oliver, myself. Lauren Bursey joined us this year, very exciting prospect. She's just recently received her PhD in art law. She is a practicing art lawyer as well, and she's currently teaching our students in an intense part of the program about art law. It's very, very important for people who go to work in the art world, be it auction houses or commercial galleries, or indeed any industry, logistics or whatever, that they understand the basics of art law, because otherwise they can get into a lot of trouble. Dr. Liza Weber is in the room, and she is related to Lauren's expertise. She specialises in provenance research of Nazi looted art, and she will say more about that later. Then we have Ivy Chan, who again has joined us for the first time of the year. I believe that she's now in the room with us, and she is an art historian and curator and consultant on Chinese antiquities in particular. And Katie, last but not least, Katie Hill, she is our Chinese modern contemporary specialist. So we've got a range of expertise amongst the faculty. What I would say is that we are all aimed to be generalists as well, so that we aim to be able to sort of, when talk about other art market sectors and regions of the world at the same time. But you can see we all have our specialisms. Mine is classical antiquity, as you probably already guessed from what I said about what became known as the sign Aphrodite. It was sold for millions of pounds eventually. Our premises are remarkable. They're in an 18th century, the only surviving 18th century or Georgian square in London, i.e. fully surviving because of war damage to a lot of other properties in London. This one survives really remarkably. In the centre of the square is a circular garden, which we have privileged access to. Only people who are related to the buildings in the square can go into that garden with a kind of key fob. Sometimes in the summer, we have been known to take students out there for seminars, but we're basically where I'm pointing now with the laser. We have two what used to be next door houses from the late 18th century in this classicizing square, probably lived in by nouveau riche people were making their money from the stock market that was developing in London in the late 18th century. So these are probably originally lived in by nouveau riche people, but they express their interests, that they express their growing status in society by, if you like, imitating British aristocracy with its art collections. And the interiors of the houses still have a lot of like neoclassical plasterwork from the 18th century. They're very, very beautiful indeed. That's Bedford Square. It reminds me, actually, in case I don't say anything later about this, we have a student magazine called Made in Bed, which is a pun on Bedford Square, and it was begun by an MA Art business student who came up to me early in the course and said, "I'm into journalism. I'd really like to do a student magazine," and it's really grown from there. You can look at the website. It's Made in Bed. If you just search Made in Bed Student Magazine, you'll find it. And it's run by and contributed to by the students only, and they do an amazing job, particularly in a more ethical manner, if you like. A lot of what they do is they engage in interview with emerging artists in London and the rest of the world, and they do interviews with them, and they post their works, and they try to introduce them to this very, very wide public. It's got their Instagram account has many thousands of followers already, and it's become quite respected, I would say, amongst the art world as a place to go for magazine material created by our students. So the program, I've done a kind of Venn diagram here. We fondly refer to the program by its acronym MAB, MA Art Business, and you can see MAB. This is you at the moment. Probably those of you in the room are listening to this fall into one or more of these categories. You might be studying art history. You might have had art world experience, maybe not studying art history. You may have both. You may be in a non-art business, but sort of art world curious, if you like. Or you might have already become something like a lawyer. We've had a lot of students like this, maybe in their late 20s, early 30s, and you're looking for a career change. Those are the kinds of students that we get. So this is you at the moment, and the MA Art Business kind of metamorphoses you. This is Dali's famous painting in tape. Tate Modern in London, of the Metamorphosis of Narcissus. So we shape change our students, I would say, throughout the year. It's already beginning to happen. We already see the signs. Students getting a little more confident in their studies and their understanding of art business. And this is what we provide you with, understanding of the cultural and financial value of art. So many of our art historians come as those people used to come to Sotheby's auction house with a great understanding of the cultural value of art, but not much understanding of the financial value, which of course you need if you're working in an auction house like Sotheby's or a commercial gallery. We see this not as a bolt-on. We see this as essential for understanding the art market in general. And so gradually we get you to understand this relationship between cultural and financial value of art. And we also use web platforms, we use subscription databases which deal not only with financial value as seen through auction prices of art and artists, but we also use a website called ArtPlats. We subscribe to it, which gives cultural rankings of artists based on what the creator, Marek Klassen of ArtPlats, we know him well, what he refers to as fame of the artist. So the moment an artist gets taken on by a well-known gallery, they attract points from that gallery and they go up in the league table. Likewise, if they show with better known artists, the better known artist points kind of cross over to them and they move up the ladder. Theoretical, practical sides of art business. I think I've already said that we're a vocational course. It's highly important, particularly in the UK system. Our degrees are validated by the Russell Group University of Manchester, and we must attain always academic excellence for our students. So a lot of what we're doing isn't just vocational. We're teaching you to write in a kind of academic manner. And we're teaching you to think in an academic manner as well as a vocational manner, and to incorporate cultural theory and business theory into your assignments and generally into your everyday conversations, so that you learn the language of art business as well and go into interviews confident and understanding what a director of a department in Sotheby's or Christie's. Our students, by the way, go into all the other auction houses, which I think is a validator of our program. The fact that other Christie's that has its own art business courses will take our students, immediately, not just into their career. So, our students go into all of, we'll talk about that more later, and you'll probably have some questions about careers. So some of the areas that we teach are art law, some of the things our students also go into, but we also teach, and we bring in industry specialists from the art insurance world, art advisory world, art funding, client services, and so on. These are the careers our students go into. So during the course, there's a lot of value in networking with our guest lecturers as well. This is a draft structure of the program that some of you, we hope, will be thinking about joining us next year, and you can see. You can see this is a draft, obviously, but you get some idea of the structure of the program. So the semester one, which is from September the 14th, that's the Monday. You can see I'm pointing to on the laser there. We have a couple of weeks of introduction and orientation and an early shared curriculum called Art Futures. It's pretty intense. It's intense because we're really throwing you in at the deep end of the art world. It's highly exciting. You mix with students from the other MAs, which is a networking process deliberately intended by us. And you hear from lecturers from outside of MA Art Business as well. And then gradually we introduce the MA Art Business specific programs, such as professional practice, which currently I lead. We bring in people, practitioners from the art industry, to talk about how their professions operate, and our students, the assignment for that tests our students' imagination and understanding of a general world of buying artworks from the real art world and creating an exhibition for a benefactor that we give you, a fictional benefactor of 12 works of art, which reflect their their own cultural interests and social status, if you like. You learn about VAT, taxes on art. What happens when if you buy some of your art, you have to buy from the EU. So what happens when you actually bring that into the country? You have to create a budget, a very simple budget at this stage, obviously. And you learn to become more sophisticated about that with business plans in other assignments and other units later in the program. So the two core units are these two: MA Art Business 01, which is Art Business Finance and Management, and MA Art Business 02, which is International Art World's Markets, Laws and Ethics. And maybe my colleagues might say more about those. Oliver is currently leading the International Art Worlds unit, and my colleague Melanie, we all share these things, but she's been directing the first semester of the Art Business Finance Management program, and I'm taking over later this semester. We have a reading week to give you time to come up for air and to do some extra work on reading and writing your assignments. We then have this will be next year, we have the first of our exciting study trips, always Monday to Friday, as much as we can, so your weekends aren't interrupted. This will be focused on the Venice Biennale in 9th to 13th November, just before it closes. Very nice time to be in Venice. And we do lots of other things on these study trips. So we focus on the Biennale, which, as many of you will know, I don't know how many of you in the room have been there. It purports to be a cultural event, but we all know that gallerists and artists, they're obviously exhibiting their works on a very, very intellectual, sort of artistic, curated level, philosophical level, if you like, nothing to do with money. But we all know that they're also they know art collectors are going to come into their national stands, etc., and see their work, and usually on the labels. And we point this out to our students. We're looking through an art business lens all the time. So although we love with the art, we continue to encourage you to continue to love the art, so that you don't only see dollar signs when you look at a work of art. But we're looking at it primarily through an art business lens all the time. So on the label, we'll be looking at what gallery represents an artist at the Venice Biennale. We do other things like all of our tours. We divide you into smaller groups, and we give you choices to join one of us on something that interests us, which is, again, seeing works of art in Venice through an art business lens. For example, I have sometimes done, for those of you interested in Renaissance art and Baroque art, I sometimes do a church tour later afternoon, but I'm only looking at altarpieces where I have a contract. So we talk about financial transactions as they were growing in the Renaissance world, and also how those artists were beginning to become the brand of the work of art, so that the churches want Botticelli as a famous name to do most of the painting. We see all of these kind of details in those contracts. So that's just an example of how we might take even old art and turn it into art business, as it were. It's very exciting. We have a winter break, and then in semester 2, which we've just started now, this will be next year, beginning on the 11th of January, we have an intense part of International Art World's Markets, Laws and Ethics, where we focus on laws and ethics. Lauren Bursey is delivering that with some guest lecturers, and she's teaching students very intensely. The students find it very exciting, but quite difficult as well, because it can be quite dense. But what we're trying to do is get your minds, really challenge you and get your minds thinking about why would we use a law like that? What are the ethical reasons why we might do that? And why law is backing that up when we're transacting in the art world, when we're making contracts between artists and dealers, etc. It's very exciting, and that's examined. So it's the only examination we have on the course, a 2-hour exam. You may have questions about that at the end. Then we have another reading week, and then we have another. Sorry. So the law exam then takes place in that final week. So the reading week enables you to do your revision for art law next year. It doesn't always work out like that. It depends when Easter is. And then this year, this is where I come back in on MA Art Business 01, the Art Business Finance Management, where I'm focusing on art valuation and art as an investment asset. And the assessment for that is really exciting. It's a portfolio, a financial portfolio where 4 students together work as a team. They each choose an artist and they have to rationalize in a presentation why they would recommend investing in these 4 different artists, if you like. Then we have our second study trip, which is with Oliver is leading that this year and he's planning it. TFAF, you may know, it stands for the European Fine Art Foundation, or the European Fine Art Foundation, which also has an art fair. It's the classic art fair. So in the first semester, I didn't say this, we focus on Frieze London, particularly for contemporary, but also, of course, for masters. And then TFAF is a more classic art fair dealing with classic antiquities, both you know, from all over the world, but with the focus on Western, I would have to say, and then modern classics and some contemporary classics, but mainly old masters. That's and decorative art and books and manuscripts and so on. And we also go to Amsterdam and do some mini trip tours there to art, you know, locations where we can see through art business lenses what's happening in the Amsterdam art world. Then we have a spring break, and then we have the electives. Electives mean that each student, whatever MA they're doing, they can select from a list of electives. Some of them are appearing on the slide down here. I'll show you a bigger list in a moment. We can't guarantee to run them every year, like every institution has that proviso. One of the things that's become more and more important is this one, the work placement. It used to be very, very small. We've realized over the last few years that most students want to do a work placement, and we're working towards making that a possibility for every student. I believe, particularly my colleague Oliver, who is running the academic aspects of the work placement elective this year, he can talk more about that later. But it does also mean that you can do an elective and a different master's degree. So, for example, let's have a look. Art and authentication sits in the MA in historical art and design, and contemporary Chinese art. Actually, although it's delivered by our very own Katie Hill, sits actually in the MA in contemporary art, and you can do curating contemporary art and so on. Semester 3, by the way, yes, it does exist, but we don't see as much of you. This is where you research and write your dissertation, and you're mainly seeing your individual dissertation supervisors during the summer months, and then you hand in your dissertation, which enables you to explore what interests you in the art business world, using all the theory and practice and experience of art fairs and visits that we've already given you, we hope, to create an art business dissertation, which is submitted on Wednesday, the 22nd of September 2027. It seems like a long way off, but those of you who might, we hope some of you might end up on the course, it will fly by. Professional practice, just looking at some of the units in more detail. Professional art world skills are taught, sort of basic curating, exhibition design, cataloguing, conservation. I say basic. We keep the program in general fairly, I don't want to say basic, because there's a lot, it becomes very sophisticated because of the way we're getting you to think laterally and to work and think in an interdisciplinary manner. But employers of our students, they don't want us to teach a whole semester on cataloguing. And the reason for that is that they have their own cataloguing systems, but our students come out knowing what a catalogue entry is. Generically, that's the point. They know about the basics of conservation, so that when they face conservation issues, bigger issues in their art world work, they will go to professional conservators, of course, for that. And that's what we're preparing our students for, just being very, very dynamic as an art business employee or employer eventually, as many of our students are, just knowing the right questions to ask and who to ask to come in as a professional when you need them. The research methods, how to use art market databases, archival research with particularly with Liza, who takes small groups of students to, if you like, analog archives a lot of the time, not just digital. How to do surveys, expert interviews, and so on. It's very, oh, sorry, here's a photograph down here where Liza has taken a group of students from last year, and they're actually looking at some archival documents. Over here, for example, we've got, this was when we did a study trip to St Ives, which I didn't talk about. That is our final trip for you next year. We will divide you into two. You can choose to go to Glasgow and Edinburgh in Scotland to look at art markets in another nation in the United Kingdom outside of London. This was a group that I take down to St Ives, which is an art colony on the coast of southwest England, very beautiful. And students were actually hanging works for a gallery there as a kind of experiment. This one was in like a trendy wine bar in St Ives. Here we are being taught how to handle works and so on. Let's go on from that. The finance and management unit, as we call them, you might call them modules. We look at business models. So this is where Melanie leads this idea of looking at different models of how business management might work using contemporary theory of business management written by business academics, and we transfer that into the art world a lot of the time. Marketing strategies, business strategies, branding, planning. You do a business plan for your assignment. So that's one of the two assignments. I've already spoken about the portfolio. Melanie might say more about the business plan if you want to hear that. We also encourage entrepreneurship and innovation. I'll come back to entrepreneurship in a moment. Innovative thinking. And as I've already said, in the second semester, we have an intense 2-week period where we're looking at art as an asset class and an investment opportunity, also looking at valuation systems, including AI. International art world, markets, laws, ethics. I've already spoken quite a lot about the law part. You can see a GI after the war, finding some of Nazi looted art down here. That's a big issue in the art market. And we look at things like how different national art markets compare one to another. Here you can see typically the United States has the biggest art market share. China and the UK vie for second position, and then followed behind by France and mainly other EU nations. It's just an example, really, of kind of ways we look at the art world. And by the way, you as master students, we will give you the models for this, but we will get you to work in teams to do presentations of national art markets, for example. So you're practicing your ability to be able to research a national art market and share it in an exciting, enthusiastic way, we hope, with your peer groups. Here's a list of some of the electives that are on offer. And as I say, they're not always on offer. Work placement is definitely always on offer. Seminars, I've already spoken about this. So it's very important that you understand in the UK educational system that it's very, very important that you learn to participate dynamically and actively as much as possible. So we try to encourage you to come along to seminars, having read a text maybe, or maybe gone on a gallery visit, and then sharing your understanding of what you saw with other students in small groups. And these are, when we go on our study trips, we're doing these in sort of small groups as well. Also in London, we very often lead small groups of students. These are optional very often to visits to galleries, openings and previews at the auction house. This is myself, by the way, several years ago, I think, with a small group of students sitting on the grass in Bedford Square. Very nice. Study visits, already said a little bit about them. This is a typical old masters and antiquities gallery in TFAF in Maastricht in the southern Netherlands. It's become the greatest traditional art fair. This is a lovely scene from when we took the students to the Biennale last year, where the theme was the Southern Hemisphere. These are Brazilian contemporary artists actually completely redesigned the very classical frontage of the main pavilion. This is the famous Stedelijk Modern Art Gallery in Amsterdam with its extension. We often talk about that in business terms. What are extensions to modern public galleries used for? Usually generating income for the public art gallery, as it is in the case of that Stedelijk gallery. Visits to auction house. This is a photo I took last year, just so you can get an idea of our students and how they're engaged with these. So these are specialists, these two people, and they're sharing their knowledge and understanding and expertise of the art market and the way the auction house value comes to estimates for works. That's just coincidence. Another Andy Warhol multi-dollar sign on a pink background in the background there. You've probably noticed. So this is all very exciting. Also, this was at Frieze Art Fair, so we'd taken our personal tutees usually round both Frieze Masters, the older art fair now in Regent's Park, London, as part of Frieze, and this was in the Contemporary Frieze Art Fair last year. This was a gallery we went to, and this was one of my personal tutees who had been asked to work during Frieze Week for the gallery that she works with in Argentina. So all of the students know her as another student, but she is in her role as art gallerist, explaining the works of art and their financial value to, I hope you realise, a very interested group of my students. Nearly at the end of my little spiel. Alumni going, I could have shown you a complete mosaic of mugshots of our alumni and the jobs they've gone into. This is just almost a random selection, I would say. Not These students aren't necessarily still doing these things, but Cami became head of the VIP and gallery relations at the famous 154 Contemporary African Art Fair at the London edition. She's also an art curator. Beatrice was the same 154 Contemporary African Art Fair, became exhibitor relations manager, kind of art business thing that she'd learned. Rosie is still managing director of Sophie McPherson, which is a leading headhunter for art world specialists, worked with them a lot with the careers. Milat is still down there in Sotheby's as their collectors group, the director of the collectors group that works with VIP collectors, but also encourages emerging collectors from Gen Z and the millennials and so on. Melanie Gurlis, I remember her. She was in the early days when I became program director of MAB. She's a very famous person, journalist. If you read the Financial Times every weekend, which we'd encourage you to do, she does an art market column every week in the Financial Times. She's also worked for the art newspaper and has also authored books, sort of slightly more journalistic books on art markets such as art as an investment ? And the art fair story and so on. So that's just a kind of like a group, almost random, of our alumni and showing the kind of things that they go into. We also have this thing, I talked about entrepreneurship. Many of our students are kind of just natural entrepreneurs. They really want to be innovative and to take risks, etc. Not all students are like that, by the way. Some of them are. That's probably the reason they choose art business. So we have this enterprise studio running optionally through the year, not by us, but by a colleague or colleagues. And it becomes a competition where various students do a pitch for a new art business, and the winner gets some seed money from Sotheby's Institute of Art to start their business. So this is a photograph of an alumna from our program, Art Business, Elsa Ackerson, and she developed this idea of creating sustainable bags that you carry your painting out of auction houses or galleries, and it really took off. It's doing very, very well, and she became one of the 30 under 30 European Forbes group prize winners. We've had other students, by the way, who've won those business prizes. So finally, you might be asking us, why choose Sotheby's Institute of Art? Why choose the MA in art business? In particular, that will be a question many of you, I think, will be asking. So firstly, we were established before most other art business courses in 1998 in response to Sotheby's Auction House, as I've already said. We then expanded the Institute to New York and the MA Art Business New York for a time in Los Angeles. I helped set that up, and also in Singapore for a time. So we're kind of nimble about where we want to teach, for business reasons. And our students learn about this. The LA and the Singapore things lasted a few years, and we decided, oh, maybe that's not the right locations. We're always thinking about new locations. We do online courses now as well, of course. 27 years, therefore, or 28 years now of art business teaching experience and networking. That's what you would be coming into in terms of your time and financial investment. National and international careers of our alumni networks. I'm constantly putting alumni in touch with current students and who ask me, is there someone, I'm going back to work in Toronto, can you put me in touch with alumni there, or in Hong Kong, or in South Africa, or in Marrakesh? We've got alumni all over the world now. And we encourage you to get in touch with them. Breadth of faculty expertise, hopefully you've realised that already, and you'll realise in when my colleagues are introduced in a moment. The electives allow access to other art world and luxury experts. Our business consultants are key art world players, the people that we bring in to lecture to our students. Art law and ethics are key elements delivered by art law academics and practitioners with Lauren. And Liza, of course, who is our provenance expert. Provenance, by the way, in case you don't know, is really, in many ways, the art market's biggest issue at the moment. So it's great having an art lawyer and an art provenance researcher expert working with us in the faculty. The MA Art Business degree is highly respected by art world employers. They value our students for their lateral thinking across different art and business disciplines. And I've already said that employers of our students include rival auction houses such as Christie's. We have a rich global network of art world alumni. I guess I've already kind of said that. We have study visits in key art world centres in London, the UK and Europe. Extracurricular activities, just to remind you, the Enterprise Studio. We're working with artists, particularly on the Made in Bed magazine, kind of optional. We also have a kind of fun game with Art Forecaster. You can look that up now if you like and start it. It's free to use, where you learn how to predict final prices at auction for works of art against their estimates. And we have a little league table and the winners win prizes. So that's all I have to say. I'm just going to stop sharing those slides so that I can see my